Hello everybody and welcome to this second edition of Industry 4.0 for Foundry sector. I welcome all the delegates, speakers, supporters, sponsors, everybody who has been present for this conference. As you will remember, we had started this series last year and we had a very successful conference in Pune for Industry 4.0 for Foundry sector. So we intended to, repeat this same similar conference this year, but unfortunately, due to COVID, as you all know, we cannot meet physically or we cannot have actually the physical conference. So the best way forward is to have a digital conference like this. As Chandekar Business Media, under the banners of Steel World and Metal World, have been doing these digital conferences for the last few months now. This is our third digital conference. And if you remember, we had one conference for Industry 4.0 for aluminum sector. Then we had one regular iron and steel summit, which was the 17th edition in Raipur. So of course that was also held digitally. And now we are here for Industry 4.0 for foundry sector. So as all as all sectors have been influenced by the technology, solutions, and the processes of Industry 4.0, foundry is no exception. So during the day, during the full day conference, we will discuss various aspects of Industry 4.0, how it is influencing the foundries, and how the prospects of foundries will be changing due to adopting of Industry 4.0 solutions and technologies. So we start with the inauguration session, and I am very happy to welcome the dignitaries for the inauguration. I would first welcome Mr. Vijay Menon, CMD of Menon and Menon Group. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Vijay Menon. I would welcome Mr. Shyam Arjun Wadkar. Shyam Arjun Wadkar is the chairman of National Institute of Forge Foundry and Forge Technology. Recently, he has taken over as chairman of the institute, and that institute is doing a lot of work for this foundry and forge yeah, forging industry. And I welcome Mr. Shyam Arjun Wadkar for this. In fact, NIFT has been supporting organization for this event also, and I thank you, Mr. Arjun Wadkar, for your support for this event also. And welcome to this inauguration function. Then
Thank you.
I welcome Mr. Devendra Jain. Devendra Jain is the managing director of auto Porwal Auto Industries, and he is also vice president of Institute of Indian Foundrymen. I welcome Mr. Devendra Jain for this inauguration session, and we'll hear from these experts what they have to say about the Industry 4.0 and its influence on foundry industry. So first, I would request Mr. Devendra Jain to say a few words on the subject. Mr. Devendra Jain, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Vijay Menon, Mr. Shyam Arjun Wadkar, Mr. D.A. Chandekar, other eminent speakers, fellow foundrymen and women, ladies and gentlemen. I am thankful to Mr. Chandekar for giving me this opportunity to speak on 4.0 foundry industry. The general view is that the foundry is a dull place where except dust and heat, there is nothing. In fact, the new generation rarely feels like joining the foundry. For them, there is no excitement, creativity, challenge, or financial benefits. This misconception has created a wide generation gap in foundry industries, depriving of much wanted new talented young engineers and managers. The foundry in India today is quite vibrant, having a bright future. Foundry is the basic industry essential for the growth of manufacturing sector, defense and agriculture. If any country having industrial growth rate of 7%, then the future of foundry industry can never be negative. As per CAGR report, the foundry market in India between 20 to 24 is going to grow at the rate of 10%. Moreover, with the recent global prospective shift among the buyer toward maintaining two supply chains instead of one supply chain, previously China only, has given further boost to Indian foundries. Trick lies in the foundry being able to catch the growing global domestic demand by focusing on fast growing segments while maintaining their position in the slow growth segment. Even today, India is leading player in the foundry market, primarily due to growing demand for metal castings from automotive sector, electricity and construction, machine tools, agriculture equipments, railway and defense equipments. But the relevant question to keep in the mind is whether the Indian foundries are really focused to cater to these industries in terms of quality, volume, and delivery time, and the new casting grades being developed required by this buyer, such as lightweight castings, composite castings, compacted graphite iron castings, memory retaining castings. I have raised these points of apprehension because Indian foundries have failed to keep themselves updated with the cutting edge technologies required to supply value added critical components. We have to come out from isolation and upgrade ourselves with the change taking place in the world. Today, the world is undergoing fourth industrial revolution, better known as Industry 4.0, but unfortunately, majority of the Indian foundries are not even aware of what exactly Industry 4.0 stands for. Industry 4.0 is based on basic concept of integrating various multiple technologies in such a way that different processes of production are able to communicate with each other and evolve environment of self-sustaining, self-correcting, autonomous running units. The essential part of 4.0 are 6 C's. First, connection. For this, we use sensors and networking. Second, cloud for computing and data on demand. Third, cyber for model and memory. Fourth, content, meaning and correlations. Fifth, community, sharing and collaboration. Sixth is customization, personalization and value added products. This goal of automation running in it seems to be in the realm of fantasy, but things have begun to change. This trickle of change would soon become avalanche, and those not in it will be left behind. In global foundries, you will be surprised to know that radical changes have already started taking place, but almost 60% of the Indian foundries are yet to focus on the challenges of Industry 4.0. In some foundries of USA, system of silica sand monitoring and placing order to suppliers automatically for the required quantity as soon as the reserve level reached is already in practice. In fact, efforts are in progress to make process more proactive by integrating the system of stock management with production control system and using material consumption data in correlation with stock data and its reserved limits. System is able to automatically record consumables and thus ensure that inventory does not go below the requirement. By integrating monitoring system to stock and production, it would be very easy and time saving to predict future weekly, monthly or annual requirement of the inputs and automatically placing order on supplier, and simultaneously the system will send notification to the concerned officers, office bearers and keep them updated. Machineries in the foundry can be monitored remotely by cloud-based control system, giving complete access to the data on the machine. If needed, remote control of certain activities possible. Also using technologies like radio frequency identification, we can automate control of the various machines. For example, on a sand mixture, it is possible to deliver exact sand recipe and quantity along with fully automatic filling sequence and integrated arrangement to check the samples in the sand mixture, and if found okay, then discharge for the use, else continue corrective measures. This level of control can reduce waste and improve overall casting quality. As the process is automated, it becomes easier to record production information and material uses because it is automatically automated and collected. Smaller footprints of 4.0 are slowly emerging in Indian foundries also. Furnace and melting operations already online, and all performance parameters, that is power consumption and pattern of consumption, melting time, etc., are available for review to the user in real time. Process-wise energy consumption and monitoring are available online through cloud computing and can be accessed from anywhere in the world in real time. Data collection has started, and based on this data are done corrections are done manually. Work is in process to interface data with machine for automated corrections. The final goal of 4.0 in the foundry, where customer order are placed and centralized control system by using MRP or ERP system, the foundry manages its supply chain and production need automatically. Machine communicate with each other through sensors and interlocking system, and the supply chain placing order for raw material and planning production need to meet the lead time automatically. The equipment then works in most efficient manner to achieve the customer requirement in terms of quality, quantity, and cost on consistent basis. It is through the utilization of the above technologies and their benefits that the Indian foundries can hope to capture the growing global market for castings. I believe that we should not let this opportunity go by like the previous revolutions, but focus on becoming 4.0 compliant at the top priority if we want to take the lead in the global foundry market. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. Very elaborate and very realistic analysis of the situation. Now, I would request Shyam Arjun Watkar to please deliver his address.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sandegar. It is always a pleasure to be on this platform and share the views with the fellow foundrymen. Uh, Mr. Devendra ji, Mr. Vijay ji, and all fellow delegates. I will like to share my views about the Industry 4.0. Before that, I will like to say something about the NEEP. The more you will hear from our director, Mr. Chettopadhyay, very soon he will be informing you about that. But this might be the last conference under the auspices of, not the auspices, but in the name of NEEP, because we are changing the name of NEEP, and not only we are changing the name, but we are changing the culture, curriculum, upliftment, and everything we are doing at the NEEP. Rather, NEEP is changing its in toto, and the name will be National Institute of Advanced Manufacturing Technology, because there are a couple of things. One is, you today the foundries, they don't only make the casting; they make the cast components. The machine shops are always associated and attached to the foundries. So today the foundry defines that they sell the cast components and not only the castings. This is one thing. And today you see that even in the foundry or any field of manufacturing, there is interdisciplinary activities going on. Even in foundry, we need right from a chemical engineer to the electronic engineer to the instrumentation engineer. We need for us to integrate our activities. So we are taking care of this kind of curriculum, which will make our students industry ready. And so to make it appropriately to suit for the today's world, we have changed the name, and it has been approved by Government of India. And very soon our nameplate and everything will be recognized as a National Institute of Advanced Manufacturing Technology. It's my pleasure to announce this thing at this forum. Now, coming to the today's subject, it's very good that Mr. Devendra ji has started with a very positive note that we are expecting around 10% rise in the foundry, and there should not be any passive thinking about the foundry growth. Uh, I mean, and he has presented a scenario of what should be the roadmap to go and to think for the foundries of today. Okay, to make it more precise, I will make my efforts to share my views on that. Now, uh, as Industry 4.0, we know that we are aware the progress made by the world enterprises from Industry 1.0 to today's phenomenon of Industries 4.0. The earlier progress was, in fact, measured by the energy input with respect to the degree of automation in manufacturing processes. Whatever the manufacturing process here, ultimately at that time there were basic mechanical engineering processes were there. And Industry 4.0 is something very different from automation. It is even different from the industrial IoT, because IoT gives you the information. And the purpose of automation is to make machining and process faster and accurate. But Industry 4.0 doesn't stop there. The purpose of Industry 4.0 is to enable the collaboration. When we say the collaboration, the central pillar of Industry 4.0 collaboration is across the business boundaries to provide visibility over entire supply chain. The Industry 4.0 gives the visibility of the factory enterprise, that is exactly knowing what is happening in your factory. We have to remember that Industry 4.0 and IoT are the aggregate of engineering domain and digital domain. So as I was referring to the interdisciplinary courses, so the foundryman has his domain knowledge of the process, and IT man knows how to integrate the things. So they have to come together to rather execute this Industry 4.0 phenomenon. But only one caution is that there is always a threat for data security. But the genius in the IT field, they are already working on it time and again. And as the hackers or the thieves of this area, they come forward with some ideas. Our genius technologies, they come out with some firewall solutions to protect our data. So what are the design principles of the Industry 4.0? We'll have a look at it. There are 4 design principles in 4.0. First is interconnection. The interconnection is ability of machines, devices, sensors, and people to connect and communicate with each other via Internet of Things. So Internet of Things is a tool to progress towards the Industry 4.0. And when we say they speak to each other, but the language in which they speak to each other is the process parameters. You know, they don't speak arbitrary. There are defined process parameters which are set by the domain expert, and those are there, and the actions of the robots and the machines are set to match those process parameters, and what is happening actually on the real-time data. So that language, they speak with each other, and then that. So I said that the process they speak in the language of process parameters. And the information transparency. The second design principle what we have to keep in mind is that this provides operators with vast amounts of useful information needed to make appropriate decisions. Interconnectivity allows operators to collect immense amount of data and information from all points in the manufacturing process. This helps functionality and identifying key areas that can benefit from innovation and improvement. You know, today in management science, they teach us that you have to look at your manufacturing process overall, not at one particular section or one particular segment. That doesn't help to suit to the culture of the manufacturing process as on date. You know, even if the person is in a core shop, what he should remember that what he is doing, he is helping to make the good acceptable quality of casting. He is making the castings. Even he is a molding shop, he is making the casting. What for he is working for? He is working for the casting. So when you are operating or when you are working at particular section, it's not enough to know only the knowledge of that section, but overall working of the factory, because you know, all points joined together, ultimately you get a result. Whatever that is the thing what we are interested in. We are interested in producing the good casting, and so you have to have that information from all sorts of point. Then you have to see yourself what is needed for you for this particular hour, and then you have to act upon that. That is what it means, that you need the information transparency, and information, immense information is collected through this. And then the third point is technical assistance. Systems should support human by aggregating and visualizing information comprehensively for making decisions and solving urgent problems on the short notice. Because those are the real-time data, so you can decide and take the decision as fast as possible. Also, the ability of cyber physical systems to physically support humans by conducting range of tasks that is unpleasant or exhausting, or for which humans they don't have the inherent interest in performing that kind of task. So it is machines or these data collection areas, or these things could be passed on to this technology. Then the fourth important is decentralization of decisions. Cyber physical systems to make decisions on their own and to perform their task as autonomously as possible. Only in the case of exceptions, interference or conflicting goals are tasks delegated to the higher level. As I said, since you have the informations could be collated. Subsequently, I'll just elaborate you how does it get the collaborated and how you take the decisions on that. And then when having said that, then we have to also look at the challenges what are there for implementation. First is the economics. Depending on your size and shape of your enterprise, you have to look at high economic cost to meet various technologies needs. But nevertheless, once you know the goal, once we have decided that we have to go into that and we have to take the advantage of this technology, then you can have the baby steps and you can do that. But we have to always remember that whatever the baby step you are taking today, that is towards that target, whatever we have got decided. So you should have the vision plan ready, and then you have the baby steps towards that, and that is economically feasible. And then subsequently you can collect all the modules and get the results and to the desired level of the industry 4.0. Then second important is business model adaptation by changing organization structure. This is a cultural change in the organizations. Basically, the hierarchy in the medium scale foundries is well defined, and then normally the tendency is that we don't look beyond our domain. But here it's not. You have to have the total cultural change in the foundry shop. As I said, you should not say that I am making core. You should say that I am making a good casting. I mean, that kind of cultural change is needed in the shop at that time. And the third one is unclear economic benefits and large investment before implementation. But as I said, you can take a step, correct yourself, check the advantages, decide what could be the next step, and go ahead with that. So it's not necessary that you should invest in toto at one go. Gradually, you can do that, and you can reach to the industry 4.0 level. It may take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It doesn't matter. But as you go on advancing, you start getting the benefit of it. Then, as I say, that then the next points come, that the organization. There are some issues also while implementing is the IT security issues. But as I said, there are the genius in the field of IT. They are taking care of it, and you have to interact with them on a regular basis. Need of reliable machine-to-machine communication system. Here you need to, as I said, again, this is interdisciplinary. You have to have the instrumentation engineer with you, because once you define the process parameters, how to catch them. As I said, the reference was made to RIF, or the instrumentation, proper instrumentation you need to have to catch that particular point, that particular reading, that particular process parameter on a real-time basis. So that is again, you come to the interdisciplinary or integration of the technologies. And then the machine-to-machine communication means that they speak only in the, as I said, they speak only in the language of the process parameters. So we have to catch them, and then they will interact and they will speak and they will tell you exactly what the information is. The need to maintain the integrity of production process. For this, you need to have a immense domain knowledge. The technology, the advancement of a technology or getting into the industry 4.0 technology doesn't mean that everything is happening automatically. Your domain knowledge of your own foundry technology is very much essential, because you have to draw the inference out of the information gathered out of it. And then subsequently that will become a case study. But before that, your domain knowledge only is the only asset which enables us to take the decision, the proper decision, right decision at the right time with the real-time data or the right data available with you. And the need to avoid IT snacks which could cause production outages. Normally it doesn't happen, because these are the complementary things. These are not the basic. They don't obstruct your process, but they complement your process. But nevertheless, you have to be careful while you implement on that. And need to protect the industrial know-how. We know that once anything comes on the computer, there is always a threat. But as I said, there are a genius. We have to talk to the IT people and see that how best you can protect your production data or whatever the data you want to protect as such. And then need to have adequate skill to expedite the transition to 4.0. This is the important point. Manpower motivation is the crux of the matter. You need to have a training, and training doesn't mean the training of technology, but it's an attitudinal change. How you can have the motivational speakers or the motivational team, how you can take rather your staff and your workmen, your people on the shop to your management, how they can motivate them to go for this. That is important, but this exercise is most essential, and that should be the ongoing exercise for any enterprise. And then appropriate qualification of the employees. You have to take them to that qualification level. If they are having those qualification, that attitude, that's best. You are really lucky. But otherwise, you did not have to demotivate them, but you have to see that they filled in with their appropriate qualifications. Having said this, as I said, for the baby steps or for the motivation or taking the workman in the confidence, I can like to share a small case study in a couple of minutes with you. That's a case study. As Devendra ji right now said, that energy is a thing which is required for each and every sub process of the foundry, whether it is a core making, molding, melting, fettling, whatever it is. You have these sub processes, and how you measure the performance. Ultimately, right from shot blasting, you measure how many minutes you have worked for the shot blasting and what is your energy consumption. So energy consumption usually exactly whether your castings are clean in 14 minutes or 18 minutes and what was the energy consumption. So that's a pulse for the human being. That is a pulse. So for the any operation to measure the energy is a pulse of that. So this kind of case study I'll just share with you. The casting making process consists of several sub processes. The energy measures is the best measure for process efficiency, economy, thus the productivity. The simple exercise of measuring real-time energy consumption versus production throughput could be first step towards the industry 4.0. Normally when we say, just now Devendra also has given the example that you measure your data and at the furnace manufacturers or the people working in the foundry, now they measure the data on a real-time basis, but they only measure the data, and that's not the thing what we are interested in. We have to see that what is the production throughput out of that, and what is the specific energy consumption, because specific energy consumption is a dynamic thing and which changes every minute, every hour, every melt cycle, every time, and that needs to be done. And then you have to assess, with your industry 4.0, your integration of the process parameters. You understand what was my result earlier. I mean, in this particular 1 hour, my SCC was say 600. Next hour it was 580. The third hour it went to 620. And your data, your industry 4.0, if you're employed on that, if you have got corrected the real-time data of all process parameters, believe me, for me, only on the furnace platform, I got 18 process parameters, right from charge mix to your dislagging time to CE meter correction time, the charge corrected time. There are 1 and 9. I mean, we all are foundermen, we know it very well. So to know these 18 parameters and to relate it to your performance when you got the best of the reading, and that you get instantly because of the 4.0. And then you take the corrective action, and each corrective action becomes a case study. So the data collected through the system could be analyzed with respect to the result obtained, and improvisation could be done on this basis. Each improvisation then becomes a case study and a knowledge repository for the given process. Because you have the different thing, when you're talking about this number of parameters, what has happened, what has gone with which parameter, what corrective action has been taken, and what the results are obtained, whether you are able to attain that 580 or not, or what was the best at that time. So that becomes a case study by itself, and that becomes a knowledge bank or knowledge repository. And ultimately, the last stage is that you develop the software that these knowledge repository, these case studies have been stored over there, and the process parameters, when they interact with each other, they found out the results and the resultant of the process. They refer to this. Today we can do it manually, but ultimate aim is that they refer to this and they make auto prediction. That is what we look forward. That could be the ultimate. Maybe it takes 5 years or 6 years or 7 years. I don't know. But that is a vision what every foundryman should have in his mind. And this is possible. In some of the industries, they have reached to that. This is stored in computing system. These case studies, these are stored in the computing system. And ultimate stage is that software uses this artificial intelligence, and subsequently the process is corrected automatically. This is the aim and object and the target. The one such example implementation I have done where I was involved personally is that Mrs. Menon and Menon. Vijayji is here. He can corroborate to some extent. As I said, it's not that we have reached to the ultimate level, but the real-time data has been collected. It is tallied with the process parameters, and then the corrective actions have been made. And the staff, as I said, the requirement, the operators and the staff or the engineers or the foundry managers, they're tuned to take the decisions on this basis. And that is what is needed. And for what we need to do at the apex level is that when you have the meeting, internal meetings, you need to ask your staff to bring the data. What was the energy consumption at what melt, at what hour? What was your process parameter? Why it was less, why it was more? And this kind of analysis and this kind of decision making that leads to your efficient working, efficient operation. And these knowledge repositories are the best steps or the pillars to reach to the ultimate aim of using artificial intelligence. Okay, having shared this with you, the implementation of Industry 4.0, we have to remember that it's not mandatory. There is no specific standard for the same. It is voluntary and need-based for your foundry shop. Area to cover, there is no limitations. You can implement to everywhere. As Devendra also referred, right from your inventory levels to your production levels, everywhere you can implement that. Rather, you need to do that, then only you can integrate. We can make it step by step and further integrate the models. We have to understand very well that the ERP is stationary. It gathers the information, makes it tabular, and provides it you as you wish. But the Industry 4.0 is a dynamic operation. It's every second you are getting the different information, the sets of information, and you have to be alert with that. This establishes a different prompt and proactive culture in the organization and gives the confidence for decision making. We always see that in foundries we take the decisions with our sixth sense with our past experience, and it doesn't serve the purpose. Sometimes you take care of one problem, but the other 4 problems they rise up after you take the decision. So that should not happen. But here, when you employ the Industry 4.0, and when you have the systems to collect this kind of data, you cultivate the habit of taking the decisions based on this data, then naturally you take the flavor of your sixth sense, but you don't only rely on your sixth sense, but you rely on the positive data which has come out of your own process. That is very reliable, very factual thing what you have got to take the decision upon. So you have got some backup information to take the decision, and that is very important. But otherwise, the foundry engineer or a foundry manager has got a sleepless night because he knows that I have taken the decision, but I don't know what I am going to see tomorrow morning. But if he has the factual data, a real-time data, and then he takes the decision, something is there to back up for his decision, So he can have a very sound sleep, I can assure you. So, sir, the engineers and managers, they could be tension free because there is a backup support for their decision. So ultimately, what we aim at the founding, we aim at the zero defect manufacturing. So what it leads to the industry 4.0, or what all the concepts, what you think of these technologies, and why we want to exert on that, because we want to control our reduction, not only control our reductions, we want to reach the stage of zero defect manufacturing. And unless and until you have this kind of technologies, if you don't, you have to avail the advantage of these technologies. You do that, as faster you can reach to the industry, with the help of this industries 4.0, you can reach to the zero defect manufacturing. And that is what we look forward. uh, to come to the 5% rejection level is very comfortable. If you are having 10%, you can come down to 5%. From 5 to 4, or 5 to 3 also, with good efforts or with the knowledge, you can reach to that. But to reach after that to a zero, you need to take the advantage of these technologies. Otherwise, it is impossible, because we know that there are 100 known parameters in the foundry, and then there are unknown so many that even I spent 40 years, I don't know how many are left now. So to take care of it from known, let us go from known to unknown. That saves that saves our miseries, and then that becomes a very complementary to reach the goal of zero defect manufacturing. So with this, my gentlemen friends and fellow foundrymen, I wish you good casting always. And with this, thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Arjun Vadkar, for your very detailed uh, dimension-wise analysis of Industry 4.0. You also explained the practicalities of Industry 4.0, how it is implemented, with what perception we have to implement, and what you expect from it. So now I move on to our next dignitary, Mr. Vijay Menon. Vijay Saab, please, the dais is yours, and we
Yeah,
are eager to hear your address.
yeah. Thank you, Mr. Sandekar. Mr. Shyam Arjunwadkar, Mr. Devendra Jain, Mr. Nanesh Chandekar, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to all of you. A statement made by recently by a leading expert on Industries 4 and artificial intelligence. It said, in the next 10 years, there will be two types of companies. Companies who have adopted and benefited from AI. When I say AI, I use AI and Industries 4 because AI is a subset of Industries 4. Companies that have used, adopted, and benefited from AI, and companies that have gone bankrupt in the next 10 years. Now, we might have a difference of opinion regarding the time frame. Some might say 10, 15, some might say faster, but the overall direction will not change. Industries 4 and AI is not a theoretical discussion that we need to have. It's a discussion which will decide the future and fate of our companies. So that is why we need to take this very, very seriously. We need to, if we don't do it, if we don't adopt it, it will not remain just theory anymore. It'll, we might be bankrupt. So with that urgency, that's the urgency with which we need to approach this kind of a problem. And I would like to congratulate Mr. Sandekar for organizing this program. And I feel this is a very right time to do it. Mr. Devendra Jain made a statement. He said a lot of foundrymen are not aware of what this Industries 4.0 is aware of what AI is. So I thought, today I'll spend a little time trying to explain the situation, what it is. And finally, towards the end of this 15-minute talk, come to some areas where we think it can be implemented in the foundry. As always, it is very difficult to look ahead and say these are things that will happen because technologies move so fast, you can't predict what is happening. But the case in point is when Steve Jobs brought out the iPhone, he didn't know that probably so many industries will get disrupted because of his iPhone. He didn't know that so many industries that were that happened because of the iPhone would disrupt industries. But it did. In 5 years, 6 years, it disrupted many industries. So 5 years, 6 years is a long time frame in the life of AI and industries 4. So we don't know what is going to happen. So I'd like to explain what the things are a little bit. AI, if you look at AI, artificial intelligence is not a new thing. The first seminar on artificial intelligence was conducted in 1956. After that, a lot of books were written. After that, a lot of movies came out. If you remember movies, old movies about machines taking over the human race, machines taking over this thing. A lot of these kinds of movies, science fiction books had come out, and a lot of people were saying that the future is going to be artificial intelligence. The future is going to be computers ruling the world, etc. Didn't happen. Basically, the kind of growth that artificial intelligence was expected to have did not happen. That was called the AI winter. AI went into a very depressing, very winter period. And why it happened was not because of the concept. The concept of AI was not flawed. It is the, it's the approach. The concept was not flawed, but the approach was flawed. The thing is, there is a very famous philosopher called Polanyi. Michael Polanyi, a British Hungarian philosopher, he said, a man can tell more than he can, a man can tell, a man knows more than he can describe. He says a man knows more than he can describe, which means we all know what a cat is like. We can tell the difference between a cat and a dog. But then if you try to explain the difference between a cat and a dog, that difference is not, you can't explain the difference between a cat and a dog. So earlier, the computer programs were trying to really get down to rules of the programming to find out how a cat is to be defined and how a dog is to be defined. But then basically very soon it came towards the end of that capability, a rule-based approach, they said, will not take us any further. And then they got down to thinking that maybe this kind of an approach will not take us far. And then finally, they decided to take a look and find out how a human being would look at it. Like how would a child learn a language versus how would you and me learn a second language? A child doesn't learn a language by going through rules, regulations, verbs, adverbs, nouns. He just understands the patterns of speech. He understands what his mother is saying. He tries to understand what his father is saying. He tries to understand what people around him are saying. And based on that, he tries to form his own judgment, own analysis, and comes out speaking the language. While you and me, if we were to go and study a language like German, what we will do is we'll try to understand the rules, we'll try to understand the grammar, we'll try to speak the language, and when that happens, we don't really be able to really be an expert in that language. Just as a child is able to become an expert in the language that his mother tongue is. So what computer programmers did was they tried to mimic the child language learning capabilities and try to bring in software programs which could do that kind of thing. And very soon they were able to bring human-like thinking patterns in the the pattern recognition capability, the unstructured data analysis capability started coming into computer programs. And when that happened, slowly we found that the AI concept again started coming up, and slowly more and more concepts which, things that humans were only capable of doing, computers started doing. An example is, if you look at the poultry industry, in a poultry industry, the chicken are hatched and it is the female, the female of the species have to be preserved so they can be developed. They need to bear eggs. The male species partly kept for meat and the others have to be killed. The problem is the sex of this chicken can be identified only after the 12th week. But then if you keep feeding the chicken up to the 12th week, these young chicken are very voracious eaters. It will, disturb the entire economics of the poultry industry. So because of that, they wanted to find a method where the sex of the chicken can be identified early. And human beings, through some methods, were able to look at the chicken and after the third week say with almost 95% accuracy that this is a female, this is a male, and separate them so that the male part of the male is preserved for meat, the other part is killed and separated. Now, computers using these new technologies are able to identify the separate at the third week or maybe a little earlier with almost 93-94% accuracy, separate the male and female. Now, if you go and ask the chicken, the humans separating the male and the female, how they do it, they were not able to explain it. Like Polanyi said, it is not possible. He knows, but he can't describe. Similarly, the computers learned patterns, understood the patterns, recognized the patterns, compared patterns, and came up with an algorithm with which they are able to separate, and very effectively they were able to separate. So over a period of time, what happens is these types of capabilities started coming and the computers started thinking more like human beings. And over a period of time, the computers will take over more and more of these human functions. So having said that, typically what happens is in a computing environment, more and more of the human weaknesses will get replaced by computers. When I say human weaknesses, what I mean is humans are not able to process immense amount of data. Immense amounts of data cannot be processed. Humans are not able to store large amounts of data. Humans are not able to recall large amounts of data. With the result, what happens is our analytical capabilities are restricted to maybe 5, 10, maximum 12 variables. And if the number of variables increase beyond that, it is beyond the scope of a human being to really understand what, come to an optimum solution. So those are areas where eventually computers will start taking over and humans will start relying more and more on computers for their solutions. With this background, let us start looking at where exactly will this happen in the foundry industry. If you look at the foundry industry is an industry, as Mr. Arjun Wadkar said, there are large number of variables that affect a casting, right from the melting stage, when it's into the melting stage, to the production stage. If you take even before that, in the design phase also, large number of variables start affecting the final quality of the final product. The capability of the foundry is dictated by a large number of variables. Okay, now basically, when these kinds of variables are involved, each variable, if you say a hot metal is poured into a mold, Mr. Arjun Wadkar said there are at least 14, 15 variables there itself. The temperature of the mold, the chemical composition of the metal, all those things are poured into the thing. The pouring time, it interacts with the sand, it interacts with the cores, it interacts with the paint on the core, it interacts with the resins in the core, the composition of, it interacts with so many things in known and unknown fashions, and the final quality of the product comes out either good, bad, or whatever. So a lot of times we know what leads to a good castings, but a lot of times we don't know what leads to a good casting. So that is where the, again, Mr. Arjun Wadkar talked of uncertainty kind of thing. And, very recently, Mr. Shyam Arjun Wadkar gave us a software. He had tied up with a UK research organization, and the name of the software was Metacause. He brought that software, and we use that software. Okay. That software, what it did was, it kept on collecting various information, not collecting itself, but we had to feed the software with data. A lot of data was fed into the software, and that software and then details like whether it is a good casting or a bad casting was fed into it. And that software threw up the optimum parameters that were to be used to get an okay casting. See, this is a very preliminary, very primary kind of an intelligence software, which came maybe 5-6 years ago, it came. Okay. Thereafter, what we need to do is we need to bring in automatic data collection, IoT, which was talked of. We need to have these datas linked together. We need to have these data analyzed properly for the whole system with machine learning capabilities, with learning, with abilities to understand what things are happening, how things are unfolding, and come up with a unique set of process parameters which will give us a good casting. When these kinds of things happen, we are actually bringing more and more of artificial intelligence and capabilities into the foundry industry. The processes get decided and modified and upgraded based on the results that we get, and continuously keeps on getting upgraded so that we can focus on the right kind of process to give us the right kind of output quality at the least possible cost. That's how artificial intelligence can come into the process parameters in a foundry. Similarly, what also happens is the capability of a foundry to make extremely maybe thin wall castings or highly capable castings with really where profiles are important, where those kinds of things are important, require certain capabilities in process monitoring. Unless these processes are monitored, we are not able to get the processes the way they want, the results that we want. Now, again, using artificial intelligence, it is possible when we are able to tighten process controls and define it further, we are able to improve the capabilities of our processes, and we are able to make castings which probably we would not have been able to make if these kinds of systems had not been put in place. The third thing is basically our method of manufacturing. I'm talking of implementation of AI possibly in foundries. The third area is possibly where, our manufacturing process, cope and drag molding, core layouts, the kind of layouts, all dictated by the capability of the processes that we have. Okay. Now, if a designer wants a particular kind of design, which cannot be made in this particular fashion. Suppose the engine component of the future requires a kind of a design which is not capable of being molded the way it is molded now, or not capable of being cast the way it is cast now. That will disrupt the foundry industry possibly. We might have to look at things like 3D printing. We might have to look at various methods of manufacture. And even though it might be more costly than the way we are manufacturing it now, it might end up becoming the preferred way of manufacture. That might disrupt this industry. What I talked of maybe in the next 10 years, foundries getting disrupted, maybe these kinds of changes can make foundry industries redundant. These kinds of requirements of process, casting requirements, if you are not able to make it, might make our foundry redundant, disrupted. So basically, these kinds of things are maybe essential to ensure that our foundry survives and grows in the days to come. Another area to think of is the cost. Almost 50% of the cost of foundry is material cost. A lot of variations in material cost on a day-to-day basis. Before the thing we are discussing about material cost variations. Now, these material cost variations are happening based on certain parameters which are happening worldwide. And it is possible to look at various forecasting techniques to look at how material prices are going to vary over a period of time. And if you are able to forecast these prices on a regular basis, our decisions to import, our decisions to make locally, our decision to stock, our decisions to convert to some other form of material can be taken very judiciously in order to reduce the overall cost of the final casting. So AI can be used there also. Another thing is AI, if it comes into the customer industries that we are depending on customers for castings. If that industry gets disrupted, we might also get disrupted. So AI can disrupt castings. If we don't follow these things within the company, we might get disrupted. If our customers are disrupted due to AI, and if those requirements are changed, then also we can get disrupted. So possibly we have a very strong chance because foundry industry is about, it has a lot of variables to control. We are not able to control all those variables on a human level basis. AI will definitely come into the foundry industry. AI will be profitably used by successful foundries in the years to come. So these are things that can possibly, we'll have to look at it in the next 3, 4, 5 years. This will dictate the course of the growth of foundries in future. So having said that, I would not like to say that I'm not just trying to paint a scary picture. I'm just trying to put across a very realistic thing, that it is not time. It is not we should not be complacent about the whole thing. We have to be careful. We have to understand how things are unfolding in the marketplace, and we have to ensure that we not only change in time, but if possible, if we become change leaders, we can even take leadership roles in this particular change. Okay. Finally, there's one small note that I would like to talk of, one thought that I'd like to talk of. A lot of times there is a thought that if machines take over everything that humans can do, what will humans do? That's a thought which comes. And I would like to end my talk on a very lighter note. They said eventually in the factory of the future, there will be only two employees. The factory of the future will have only two employees. One employee, there will be a man and a dog. The man's responsibility is to feed the dog. And the dog's responsibility is to ensure that the man does not touch any of those machines. A man should not touch any of those machines, and he has to feed the dog, keep him alive, and the dog prevents him from interfering with the machines at all. But that's not the way things might unfold. Human beings will be able to move into a more value-added work. Will be able, like the Industrial Revolution, we moved from plowing land to doing more value-added work. We got better salaries. Our standard of living improved. Similarly, human beings will move from certain levels of jobs to another level of job. Will get better paid. Will get better access to the good things in life. Will be able to relax, live life better, improve his standard of living. And I personally feel AI should not be looked at from a doomsday point of view. It should be looked at as from an opportunity point of view, to understand how the human race can further progress and bring further prosperity to the humans in the world. So with that, I would like to end my talk, and I once again congratulate Mr. Sandekar for organizing this program. It's a very relevant subject, and people who are able to take this seriously will be the people who progress and grow in future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vijay Menon, for your very lively and realistic analysis. And in fact, it is from someone who has been implemented Industry 4.0. And rightly so, you have advised and given tips to the industry how to go ahead in this matter. And yes, the collaboration between man and machine will bear the fruits in the future, and that's what I believe. And with this, we are coming to the end of this session. We'll take a small 10 minutes break and we'll start with our panel discussion. But before that, I would like to personally thank all the dignitaries, Mr. Arjun Wadkar from NIFT, Mr. Vijay Menon from Menon and Menon Limited, and Mr. Devendra Jain from Porwal Auto. Thank you very much for being with us and sharing your thoughts, initial thoughts, the overall thoughts about the Industry 4.0 and how it's relevant to the foundry sector. And I'm sure this has set the pace of the full day conference and the deliberations which will take place after this, maybe panel discussion, maybe case studies, or maybe some technology solutions, unveiling of the technology solution. But it has surely set the tone and the pace of the conference on this day. And I again thank you very much for being with us for this inauguration session. And with this, we end this session, and we'll have a small 10 minutes break, and we'll start with our panel discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.